Chapter 1. My wife had amnesia, completely forgetting me, her husband of many years, and reuniting with her childhood sweetheart, who also came from a wealthy family. The two of them were openly affectionate and even demanded a divorce from me. Friends and family advised me to wait for her to regain her memory, saying she'd regret it then. But I signed the divorce papers without hesitation because I knew my wife hadn't lost her memory at all. My wife, Yun Shan, had been in a car accident. She suffered no major injuries, only some minor cerebral hemorrhaging. Before I saw her, the doctor warned me that cerebral hemorrhaging could cause dizziness, amnesia, and other symptoms, telling me to be prepared. So when she woke up and asked me who I was with an indifferent look, I smiled brightly. Yun Shan, I'm your husband, Yicheng. Do you really not remember anything at all? I gently stroked my wife's hand, my smile softening. We've been in love for 6 years, married for 2, and you're carrying our baby. Luckily, she's still healthy, and you must be looking forward to being a mother, right? As I touched her swollen belly, a flicker of guilt crossed Yun Shan's eyes, but she still shook her head firmly. Impossible. Zhou Zhe and I are childhood sweethearts. We've been together since our first year of high school. How could I let an outsider like you interfere? This child has nothing to do with you. She turned to Zhou Zhe and extended her hands towards him. Zhou Zhe, we've always loved each other the most, haven't we? Even during the car accident, we were together in the car, sharing the impact, truly sharing both joy and hardship. Zhou Zhe's smile was a little awkward, but he still tightly grasped Yun Shan's hands. The midday sun streamed through the thin gauze curtains, and the fine dust dancing in the sunlight enveloped the two embracing figures, making them as beautiful as a mural. Just like back in high school, when they kissed deeply under the setting sun. Back then, they were fooling around and I was quietly studying nearby. If a teacher appeared, I became their tutor, covering for them for 3 years. I knew I was just a tag-along, but I was happy to do it. Because I was poor, and because my parents didn't like me, even though I had the highest score in the city on the high school entrance exam, I was denied the opportunity to attend high school. Fortunately, the elite private high school offered special enrollment to 10 outstanding students from low-income families, providing generous scholarships and the promise of a bonus ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands after graduation. So I was able to continue my studies. Good grades were supposed to be a student's asset, but not in an elite private school. This was a gathering place for money and connections, and even the best students from poor families would end up working for them. My situation was imaginable. Looking at the mocking and discriminatory gazes of others, I even regretted coming to high school. For a moment, I wanted to run home and let my parents sell me to a rich, foolish woman as a live-in husband. But I was lucky. Zhou Zhe eventually accepted me. He allowed me to be his and Yun Shan's follower. He said that the other boys in the school were too outstanding, and if someone kept following him and Yun Shan, what if they hooked up with Yun Shan? And someone like me, a lowly poor person, no matter how handsome, would at most be considered trash in the eyes of women. No wealthy heiress would truly love me. I don't quite remember what I was thinking at the time. I only remember that he gave me 10,000 yuan. This was my payment for being his follower for 3 years. In the eyes of many, 10,000 yuan was insignificant. No one would stoop for such a small amount of money. But I would. Chapter 2. Why are you still here? Yun Shan frowned, clearly displeased. Her voice pulled me back to reality from my memories. I smiled good-naturedly. Then I'll go home. Take care of yourself. Then I nodded and smiled at Zhou Zhe. Zhou Zhe, sorry to trouble you these next few days. Pity flickered in Zhou Zhe's eyes. Shinja, I'm sorry. Yun Shan and I are sorry. But I really love Yun Shan too much. I can't live without her. Please leave her, okay? I silently looked at Yun Shan. She stared at her stomach, hesitation in her eyes. Zhou Zhe buried her head in his shoulder, pleading, Yun Shan, I can't live without you. When the accident happened, you promised you'd divorce him and marry me. If you want to keep the child, we'll raise it well together. If you don't, I'll arrange for the best doctor. Hearing this, the hesitation in Yun Shan's eyes faded, and she coldly said to me, Yicheng, I don't know what happened between us, but I really can't love you. Let's get a divorce. I almost laughed. Zhou Zhe, do you really love Yun Shan? Yun Shan, do you really not remember what happened between us? The fork in the road of our three destinies was after the college entrance exam. Back then, I got into Peking University as I'd wished and received the promised 500,000 yuan reward. Even though most of it was taken by my parents and younger brother, I finally had a little savings of my own. I could finally breathe freely in university. Yun Shan's academic performance was only average, but by taking the Ritter-Knee route, she also got into a prestigious university, as she'd hoped. Only Zhou Zhe, despite multiple advantages, had a shockingly low score of 200 on the college entrance exam. In the end, he could only go to study in the UK. At first, Yun Shan and Zhou Zhe were able to maintain their relationship, video chatting and expressing their love every day. Every holiday, Yun Shan would fly straight to the UK. But over time, the fiery hormones of youth were constrained by the long distance. The pride of the prince and princess made them unwilling to compromise, and finally, they broke up dramatically. At that time, to provoke Yun Shan, Zhou Zhe even sent her photos of himself in bed with several foreign women. His words were harsh. Yun Shan, stop clinging to me. Your flat figure can't satisfy me at all. I will never love you again. Yun Shan was so angry that she wanted to go to the UK and kill Zhou Zhe. Proud as she was, she couldn't stand being cheated on so many times. Her parents couldn't stop her, but I did. She and Zhou Zhe treated me like a lackey, a dog, but I considered them friends. Because regardless of their initial motives, they had saved me when I was at my poorest and most helpless. I just didn't expect that, in the end, Yun Shan would choose me to be her boyfriend. I asked her why. I clearly remember the disdain in her voice when she answered. Zhe, the person Zhou Zhe looks down on the most is you. In his eyes, you'll always be the lowest dog. But I'm going to love you. I'm going to cherish you. I want him to know that in my heart, he's not even as good as you, a dog. I want him to regret it for the rest of his life. Was I hurt? I should have been, but I nodded and agreed. Because the more I saw the world, the more I realized that poverty was the hardest chasm to cross. I needed a high starting point, a springboard, and Yun Shan was the most convenient springboard. Now she and Zhou Zhe are back together, and I've become the abandoned dog again. It doesn't matter. I've already obtained the money and wealth I crave the most. As for love, I never expected it. Chapter 3. In university, I agreed to be Yun Shan's boyfriend on the condition of 200,000 yuan in pocket money per month. Some called it selling myself, but I didn't see it that way. We were a normal couple. I wasn't a kept man, and she wasn't a sugar mama. The pocket money was just a byproduct of our relationship. The reason I demanded the money was to secure my own future. My intuition told me that once Zhou Zhe returned, I would be kicked out. I was lucky. Zhou Zhe remained captivated by the adoration of various beauties overseas. So I continued to earn money through our relationship and used it to support my continuous learning and self-improvement. With the money, I hired a one-on-one English tutor to improve my clumsy spoken English. Without studying abroad, I developed a standard London accent coveted by high society. With the money, I hired one-on-one tutors for Spanish and French. I persuaded Yun Shan to travel to Europe during the summer holidays, and the once provincial bumpkin could now switch between 3 foreign languages with ease. With the money, I attended etiquette classes with renowned instructors to improve my dressing style, taste, and social etiquette. With the money, I could also freely socialize with classmates and friends without feeling ashamed of not being able to afford meals. What made me feel most secure was that with the money, I bought my own large apartment the first year I obtained my Beijing hukou. The Beijing hukou was also within my plans. My safest route would have been postgraduate studies and civil service exams, but thinking of my parasitic family members, I gave up on that path. If I went down that road, I would be restricted by too many rules and moral constraints bound to my family of origin for life. But I needed the hukou. So with my Peking University degree and Yun Shan's connections, I joined a public institution, quickly obtained my Beijing hukou, and then resigned with compensation. It was shameless, but I had no other choice. I wanted to become rich quickly and not be harassed by my family. So my only option was to start my own business. When I was busy with my startup and had achieved some small success, almost forgetting I had a girlfriend named Yun Shan, she suddenly proposed to me. Graduation season is breakup season. Although she didn't explicitly break up with me at the time, she left for England without a word. I didn't care about the love-hate entanglement between her and Zhou Zhe, nor did I know what they went through later. I only knew that she returned with a deep sadness. I assumed that Yun Shan and I were completely over, but she made a surprising comeback. Yicheng, although I still have mixed feelings of love and hate for Zhou Zhe. Although I don't love you, let's get married. I want Zhou Zhe to understand that if I want a dog he once bullied, can also become a high-class gentleman. Did I mind being a stand-in? I didn't know. It was a strange feeling, but I couldn't say I was unwilling. Even though I was already quite accomplished and had many female admirers, I knew my place. Compared to the Chi family, I was still like an ant facing a giant tree. I needed the shade of that tree. We got married. Yun Shan married me with great fanfare. Everyone said I had married above my station, envying me for snagging a wealthy heiress. Only I knew that she was always just my boss. And my in-laws, they were also my bosses. Facing the bosses hidden behind the facade of marriage, I naturally did my utmost to be a good husband. Only in this way could I gain more resources and develop my own business. Beneath the veneer of happiness, I was always waiting for the moment of divorce. Especially after Zhou Zhe returned, I immediately sensed their ongoing entanglement. At first, it was staying out all night, and later, it was arguments between Yun Shan and her family. She wanted a divorce, but instead of telling me first, she discussed it with her parents. Isn't that ridiculous? In her eyes, I was always insignificant, not worth a moment of her thought. However, my willingness to divorce didn't mean I would Feng Qi Li and give up my interests obediently. I wasn't a rag for Yun Shan and Zhou Zhe to use and discard as they pleased. Chapter 4. The only thing that made Yun Shan feel slightly guilty was the child she was carrying, a child eagerly anticipated by the Qi family. But then she had a car accident, and using amnesia as an excuse, she asked for a divorce. This eased her conscience, as if it absolved her of any moral responsibility. Now, with the final shoe dropped, I can finally sleep soundly. True to her word, Yun Shan handed me the divorce agreement in just 3 days. My hands trembled as I took it. My eyes filled with feigned misery as I stared at her. Yun Shan, 6 years is long enough to warm even the coldest stone. Have you truly never loved me? In your eyes, were my efforts for the past 6 years all a joke? Have you considered our child? Like the most pitiful man in the world, I, a grown man, went from trying to hold back my tears to squatting on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. The sadness was fake, but the tears were real. Even if I had married her for power and money, even if every night together was just an act, it was still 6 years of entanglement. Yun Shan reached out a hand, wanting to stroke my hair, but stopped midair. Yicheng, you've always been the strongest man. Please don't cry like this. I'm sorry. You are truly wonderful, the perfect husband and son-in-law, but I've always loved Zhou Zhe more. You know, you've been with me for 6 years, but I've also waited for him for 6 years. You couldn't bear to see me continue suffering, could you? I cursed her in my heart, but my face remained a mask of helpless grief. Sighing, she took back the divorce agreement. Half a day later, her lawyer delivered a new one. The lawyer gave me a knowing smile. Mr. Shen, you are truly remarkable. You've used the Qi family's connections to make a fortune with your fitness clubs, and you've still managed to get so much real estate and hundreds of millions in liquid assets from Miss Qi. I admire you. With a wry smile, I sighed. If I had a choice, I would prefer to grow old with her. The lawyer shook his head and chuckled. No matter how smart a woman is, she can't resist a man's tears. Of course, this also shows that Miss Qi cares for you. Otherwise, no amount of crying would have softened her heart enough to double the compensation in just half a day. I offered no comment, just signed the document with a bitter smile and a shake of my head. My eyes are precious. If not for profit, why would I use tears to harm them? From beginning to end, I didn't utter a single complaint against the Qi family or Yun Shan. Even toward Zhou Zhe, the man who stole my wife and my marriage, I remained silent. A dignified separation, a peaceful departure. From now on, I would only love myself and my soon-to-be-born child. Even though the due date was approaching, I kept myself busy with my business every day. Only my career could give me the greatest sense of security. In the past 2 years, my fitness clubs had expanded to 3 locations nationwide. Although few in number, they catered to the wealthy and celebrities, generating a substantial income. Having come from poverty, I feared it more than anyone. I wanted to create the best possible material conditions for myself and my child. Although Yun Shan was hesitant, I hoped she would give birth to the child and let me raise her. After my persistent pleas and the persuasion of her parents, coupled with her own health concerns regarding an abortion, she finally agreed. The condition was that the child would carry the Qi surname and be registered in the Qi family genealogy, but I would be responsible for raising her. I had no attachment to my family of origin, nor did I care about passing on my surname, so I readily agreed. I eagerly awaited the child's arrival. Finally, one Saturday morning in autumn, my daughter Man announced her arrival into the world with a loud cry. The Qi family gave her official name, but I gave her the nickname Man. I had grown up wild due to poverty, and I hoped that she, thanks to wealth, could grow up wild and free. I didn't seek romantic love, nor did I yearn for familial affection, but what I truly craved was genuine connection. Finally, there was someone in this world I could truly care for. Holding Man in my arms, my former mother-in-law smiled beside me. She gently held Man's tiny hand and whispered, Yicheng, even if Yun Shan and Zhou Zhe have children in the future, the Zhou family won't allow the child to carry the Qi surname. So, you're a great benefactor to our Qi family. I smiled and said, You're too kind. My former mother-in-law sighed, her face clouding with worry. When Yun Shan was played for a fool by Zhou Zhe, she was distraught. It was you who stayed by her side, gently guiding her back on track. We were so hopeful that Yun Shan would finally take over some of the company's affairs. But as soon as that Zhou Zhe returned, she reverted to her lovesick self, spending her days with him, indulging in frivolous pursuits. Even staying in the country for a few days became a luxury. Your father fell ill a few days ago. I told them to come back immediately. But Yun Shan preferred to celebrate Zhou Zhe's birthday in France rather than return to care for her own father. How can she do this? Before, I advised you to be patient, to delay the divorce, but you were too young to endure it. As your mother, I ache for you. I hate to see you struggling alone out there. But don't worry, Yicheng. Your father and I will absolutely not allow that Zhou Zhe to marry into our family. Even if our families are of equal standing, his reputation is too tarnished. We can't afford the disgrace. I listened to my former mother-in-law's litany of complaints without saying a word. This was a Qi family matter, not something an outsider like me should comment on. Suddenly, she grasped my hand. Yicheng, come home. This house needs you, needs Man. Come home. The Qi family wasn't my home, and they didn't truly like me, as they might believe. I remember when I first started dating Yun Shan, her parents were very much against me. I understood. After all, no parents of a prominent family would want their daughter to fall in love with a poor social climber. I hadn't expected their approval. Later, because Yun Shan was so distraught over Zhou Zhe, her parents reluctantly accepted me. But the disdain in their eyes, the mockery in their tone, I remembered it all vividly. Especially during the first Chinese New Year I spent at their house. The entire Qi family gathered together, laughing and chatting, completely ignoring me. Some even tried to treat me like a servant, deliberately humiliating me. Yun Shan had no eyes for me. Her parents deliberately cold-shouldered me. Who else could I rely on? Fortunately, I had been prepared. I maintained a calm smile, preventing them from being overly aggressive. After repeated exclusions and cleaning up Yun Shan's messes time and again, they finally became accustomed to my presence and accepted me as the future successor of the Qi family. I could always smile through their various attempts to make things difficult, but I wouldn't deliberately degrade myself. I was no longer the clown I once was. Why should I return to the Qi family to be humiliated again. Chapter 5. Man-Man's arrival slowed down my pace of life. Money is important, but so is spending time with my child. I made more time to watch Man-Man grow. I love my daughter, and my former in-laws adore her too. My former mother-in-law originally wanted to throw a lavish full-month celebration for Man-Man, but I declined, saying the baby was too young to be around so many strangers. Finally, on her 100th day, we held a banquet. I didn't invite my own parents and brother. Our relationship is practically non-existent. I only invited close friends and business partners. The Chi family, however, went all out, with their entire extended family and friends in attendance. My former in-laws were beaming, gifting Man-Man a building and a yacht named after her on the spot. Quite generous. I didn't refuse. Although Man-Man is my child, she is also the Chi family's first grandchild. These things are rightfully hers. Everyone, eager to please, showered Man-Man, a baby who understood nothing, with flattery and praise. Yun Shan and Zhou Zhe weren't invited to the 100-day banquet, but they still arrived late, hand in hand. Zhou Zhe, in a well-fitting black suit, presented a set of silver jewelry with a smile. She's too young for real gold and jade. This is perfect for her. My former mother-in-law didn't even look at him. She had someone take the silver jewelry and throw it in the trash. Looking at Man-Man with a warm smile, she said, "Our Man-Man is the only child of the Chi family. She can't be touched by such cheap trinkets." Her words were clearly directed at Zhou Zhe. Zhou Zhe's face turned livid, but he couldn't lash out on the spot. He just pinched Yun Shan's waist. My former mother-in-law cheerfully addressed her daughter. "Yun Shan, are you so happy you've become silly? What are you standing there for? Come and hold your daughter." Yun Shan looked a little flustered as she faced the pink and tender baby, but her expression softened, even showing a hint of maternal warmth, which was truly rare. Smiling, she asked me, "She's so small. Can I hold her? Will I hurt her?" When Man-Man was born, Yun Shan only glanced at her before having someone take her away. This was the first time she was holding her. I smiled. "She's over 3 months old. Easy to hold. Just don't hold her upright for too long. Try to hold her horizontally. It's better for her spine. Look, Man-Man is smiling at you. She likes her mommy." Yun Shan's face lit up with surprise. Man-Man's smile is so beautiful. She looks just like me when I was little. The way she blows bubbles is so cute too. My former mother-in-law chimed in. "But Man-Man is much more well-behaved than you were as a child. You cried so much that several nannies were driven to nervous breakdowns. But little Man-Man is so quiet, with her big, bright eyes and her sweet smile. You can tell she's blessed." We chatted and laughed. If someone didn't know the situation, they would have thought we were a happy family. But this scene was like a dagger to Zhou Zhe's heart. Disregarding high society etiquette, he rushed over to us and yanked Yun Shan behind him, as if she were his possession. I immediately took Man-Man away as he charged towards us. I wouldn't risk my child's safety. My former mother-in-law glared at Zhou Zhe. "Our chief family granddaughter's 100-day banquet is only for family. Why are you here?" Accustomed to doing as he pleased, Zhou Zhe pointed at his former mother-in-law and yelled, "I'm your daughter's childhood sweetheart. We've been together for over a decade. Why can't I be here? You used to like me so much. You said I was the only one worthy of being the Chi family's son-in-law, that after Yun Shan and I married, I would be your son. But in just a few years, everything has changed. Yun Shan and I love each other so much, but you're trying to tear us apart. Do you think it's still the Qing dynasty?" My former mother-in-law trembled with rage. She never expected Zhou Zhe to make such a shameless scene. Furious, she slapped Yun Shan. "Look at the kind of man you're involved with. He dares to yell at me before even marrying you. If you do marry him, will he drive us to our graves?" She then confronted Zhou Zhe. "I did say those things before, but do you have no idea what you've done? Your promiscuity abroad was shameful enough, but you even contracted some unclean disease. Is this how the Zhou family raises its sons?" Zhou Zhe didn't back down, instead smiling smugly. "I may be unclean and infertile, but your daughter got a ligation for me. We're a perfect match." As his words fell, dozens of people fell silent. My former father-in-law collapsed, his old illness flaring up. My former mother-in-law clutched her chest, on the verge of fainting. My heart felt like it was experiencing an earthquake. Zhou Zhe and Yun Shan couldn't have children. Heaven is helping me and my daughter. Chapter 6. High society values subtlety and restraint. Even when relationships sour, public disputes are rare. Yet the Qi and Zhou families became a laughingstock, their bickering louder than fishwives in the slums. It couldn't be helped, really. Zhou Zhe causing Yun Shan's infertility was a huge blow. The Qi family's reaction was understandable. Still, I found it all quite amusing. Zhou Zhe bears responsibility, yes, but Yun Shan isn't a child or a fool. She chose to get sterilized for love, a truly explosive move in the dating world. From Zhou Zhe's perspective, he landed a passionate, lovesick soulmate. Men might mock him, but secretly they envied him. Who wouldn't want a woman willing to die for them? I felt no envy, however. My daughter and I were the true winners. Ever since Yun Shan's infertility came to light, my former in-laws have been incredibly warm towards us. They'd initially opposed the divorce, urged me to be patient, but that was all for show. No matter how much I'd achieved, in their eyes, I was still a social climbing gold digger from a poor background, not worth jeopardizing their relationship with their daughter for. Especially after my family had caused that embarrassing scene shortly after the wedding, showing up and demanding money, acting like utter hooligans. I dealt with that firmly, crippling my younger brother afterwards and threatening him with death if he ever showed his face again. I offered them a yearly sum of 100,000 yuan if they stayed away, and they finally fell in line. Compared to such problematic in-laws, the Qi family naturally preferred the equally wealthy Zhou family. But with Zhou Zhe's reckless behavior as a contrast, I'd become the world's best son-in-law. He visited often, ostensibly to bond with his granddaughter, Man, which wasn't a bad thing. But just 6 months later, Yun Shan herself appeared at my door. Thinner, more subdued, her eyes lost and downcast, a stark contrast to the love-struck woman she once was. I politely invited her in, my gentle smile unwavering. If you want to see Man, I can bring her to the family home. No need to trouble yourself. Yun Shan stared at me for a long moment before speaking. Yicheng, let's get back together. Yes, let's. Man needs a complete family. We can love her together. Her initial hesitation hardened with the second sentence, as if she truly intended to reconcile. I smiled, looking down. We married because of Zhou Zhe, divorced because of him, and now you want to reconcile. Has he done something again? Yun Shan, we've known each other since high school. Even if you didn't consider me a friend, I've always been grateful to you. For 6 years, I willingly devoted myself to you and our family. Please, for the sake of that devotion, let me go. I won't cling or become hysterical, but I have feelings, loves, and hates. Please stop treating me like a disposable object. And please don't use Man as an excuse. Ask yourself, have you been a good mother? You claimed the Qi family needed an heir. Yet since Zhou Zhe's return, have you spared a single thought for your daughter? She wronged me, but I was partly to blame. I had my own motives pursuing her. But Man was the daughter she once longed for. Yet she abandoned her for Zhou Zhe. She doesn't deserve to be a mother. I continued to smile, but my stomach churned. She disgusted me. Chapter 7. Yun Shan fled in panic. I watched her retreating figure through the window, a sneer playing on my lips. Her usefulness to me had become negligible. She was no longer worth sharing a bed with. Her visit was simply because Zhou Zhe had fallen out with her parents and run off again, leaving her needing me to mend her broken heart. It made sense. Regardless of his character, Zhou Zhe was still the sole heir of the Zhou family. He had the luxury of not having to cater to his in-laws or appease women. His return was due to his weariness of the foreign women abroad who couldn't offer him the tender, intimate love that only Yun Shan could provide. However, he wouldn't compromise and become a reformed, faithful man for her. Nor did he have the patience to help manage the tedious and uninteresting family business of the Qi family. Proud as he was, he would never lower himself for anyone. His previous falling out with the Qi family wasn't out of love for Yun Shan, but rather a bruised ego from not getting a woman he thought he could easily have. His departure now, knowing he wouldn't gain anything from confronting the Qi family, was only natural. They might have loved each other, but they weren't compatible. Although Yun Shan was a mess, she still had some shame. After my rejection, she didn't bother me again. However, my former in-laws were harder to deal with. Having finally gotten rid of Zhou Zhe, they naturally wanted custody of their granddaughter back. Me returning home was merely a bonus. My former mother-in-law invited me for a serious discussion, laying out the pros and cons for my consideration. I no longer needed the Qi family's influence. I politely declined with a smile. Mom, if you want Man-Man's custody, I have no objections. After all, her surname is Qi, and she is your and Dad's granddaughter. But think about it. Yun Shan was infatuated with Zhou Zhe, and she might be infatuated with other men in the future. If that happens and things get messy again, how do you think Man-Man will feel about her mother? Furthermore, you know my family situation very well. If we remarry, it's inevitable that they will become arrogant and complacent. Do you want to see their smug faces? I advised her to consider the benefits of maintaining the status quo and the drawbacks of forced reconciliation. My former mother-in-law wavered. People tend to romanticize the past after separation. In reality, there were quite a few disagreements when we lived together. It was better to maintain a cordial but distant relationship like now. The Qi family finally dropped the issue of remarriage and custody change. They had considered taking Man-Man's custody by force, leaving me out of the picture, but I was no longer someone they could easily bully. Not to mention that Yun Shan and Zhou Zhe's tumultuous relationship had put me in a favorable position in the public eye. My extensive network of university, alumni, and prominent figures meant that if things turned ugly, even an ant could shake a giant tree. I had finally escaped the lowly fate of being bullied and become the person I aspired to be. I saw Zhou Zhe again 2 years later at Paris Fashion Week. He was still dressed impeccably, with 2 fair-skinned beauties on his arms. But even across the runway and the hazy crowd, I could see the fine lines around his eyes and the weariness in his gaze. His eyes were fixed on me, filled with a hint of resentment. I smiled faintly at him, just like I did back then. After the show, I chatted and laughed with several fashion editors as we left the venue, followed by a few celebrities who echoed our cheerful banter. Zhou Zhe stopped me. Yicheng, let's talk. I nodded to my friends with a smile and followed him into a nearby cafe. Seeing my continued silence, he finally lost his composure and spoke first. Yicheng, you're quite successful now. Back then, you were just a dog I bought for 10,000 yuan, and now you've transformed yourself into a high society gentleman. My smile remained unchanged. Zhou Zhe, thank you for the 10,000 yuan. As for my current status, I deserve it. Others have no right to be jealous. Zhou Zhe's eyes were filled with venom. You deserve it. You achieved it by stealing a friend's girlfriend and sleeping with women. You're nothing but a shameless piece of trash. I clasped my hands on the table and sneered. I don't understand your resentment towards me. You were the one who pushed Yun Shan towards me. You were also the one who, during our marriage, stole my wife and shamelessly cavorted with her day and night. In all of this, you were the ones who wronged me, yet I never said a word against you. Zhou Zhe, have you had enough of playing with women? Or have you been played enough by them? Why have you reached this point where you can't afford to play anymore? Whether I was a man or a dog back then, I now stand tall on my own merits, while you have already started your decline. Your selfishness has made your parents a laughingstock, and even their business has lost its direction. Instead of reflecting on yourself, you blame me. Does that make any sense? Thinking back to high school, why did I choose to be a dog? Because I needed money, and even more, I needed safety. Back then, those wealthy and privileged classmates not only mocked and ostracized me, but also took pleasure in tormenting me. They thought it was a joke, but for me, the recipient, it was blatant bullying. And the ringleader was Zhou Zhe. He enjoyed watching me grovel after being humiliated, and I obediently fulfilled his desires. I was too docile, so docile that I didn't pose a challenge, and that's how I became his lackey. How ironic, becoming a lackey was my good fortune. Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived those 3 years of high school. I never thought about revenge, because I knew the rules of society weren't made by me. I could only fight against the current and strive to become stronger. After sacrificing so much dignity, time, and freedom, I finally achieved it. Chapter 8. Zhou Zhe couldn't even stand still. Stability is the most important thing in this circle. Even an incompetent next generation is better than reckless disruption. Zhou Zhe should be thankful for the strong foundation his parents built. Otherwise, he would have long lost the right to sit and drink coffee with me as an equal. However, I think the day he's abandoned by the circle isn't far off. After returning to the country, Yun Shan was waiting at the airport. Her first words to me were, "Did Zhou Zhe give you a hard time again? He's always so arrogant. You don't need to indulge him anymore." How laughable. Back then, she was Zhou Zhe's most devout believer. Even if Zhou Zhe wanted to kill someone, she would hand him the knife and take the blame for him. Just like in high school, whenever Zhou Zhe was unhappy, he'd treat me like a dog, working me to exhaustion, and she would just smile, rest her head on his knee, and praise him for doing a good job, praising him as a warm little son. Skipping over those unpleasant memories, I smiled indifferently. No, we're all friends, just catching up. But he doesn't seem to be doing very well, and he still loves you. Yun Shan, go to Paris and find him. I hope you two will be happy together. My situation was predictable. Yicheng. Yun Shan stared at me in a daze for a moment, murmuring, "You're completely different from the timid person you used to be. When you smile, it's like you're surrounded by a dazzling light, so handsome and charming." It was absurd that the first time she complimented me was after the divorce. I lowered my eyes and remained silent, too tired to bother with her. Seeing me silent, she drove in silence as well. Halfway there, she suddenly spoke again. "Yicheng, I've actually let go of Zhou Zhe a long time ago. His love is like poison. I'm afraid I don't dare to go near him. Can we live a good life together from now on?" I knew Zhou Zhe had called her countless times recently, but she hadn't answered any of them, as if she really wanted to cut him off completely. This was one of the reasons Zhou Zhe hated me. He thought I had stolen his Yun Shan. I smiled faintly. "Yun Shan, when you had that car accident, weren't you and Zhou Zhe arguing in the car? You say his love is like poison, but what you loved back then was that deadly intensity, wasn't it?" I knew. While driving, they were discussing how to force me to divorce. Getting carried away, Zhou Zhe rested his head on her, their love reckless and unrestrained, so intense that even nearly dying didn't bring a shred of guilt. What Zhou Zhe did had nothing to do with me, but Yun Shan. She was once my wife, the mother of my daughter. She was truly disgusting. And I'm grateful for her disgusting nature, allowing me to climb upwards without any guilt, stepping on her to get there. Focusing on interests, not feelings, that's the best relationship I can have with Yun Shan. I have my own career, I manage my daughter's share of the Chi family's assets, and I don't know how happy my days are. Looking at my cute and slightly spoiled little darling, I often recall my childhood experiences. I always remember the indifferent expressions of my parents at the dinner table as they discussed how much money they could get by selling me as a live-in son-in-law to a foolish woman. It was as if I, their son sitting beside them, was just an object without feelings. I used all my efforts to escape them, but I could never escape the deep-seated anxiety and fear within me. That's why I crave money, power, everything that can make me stronger. Now that I have a daughter, I finally understand that only emotions can heal a heart riddled with wounds. Every sweet smile from my daughter is the best healing for me. I've walked through countless thorns to wear this heavy, beautiful crown. I hope my daughter, and every child, can hold their heads high and wear their own crown. Not like me, who once lowered my head to the dust for a crown.